When I think of Thorpe Park, I think about Princess Diana with Prince Harry and Prince William visiting Thorpe Park, and pretty much the most famous photo of the three of them riding Logger's Leap, which is now demolished, the log flume at the park. And they visited Thorpe Park for 3 years in a row for Easter holidays, 1991, 1992, and 1993. I think it's awesome.
I think it's cool, too. I think of Princess Diana whenever I'm there because of the photo of them on the log flume and also the one of them on Depth Charge where she's wearing her amazing, like, bejeweled Hard Rock Cafe jean jacket. And, when they went, it's like they just waited in line with everyone else.
Yeah, did you know, everyone, that Princess Diana insisted on waiting in line with everyone else in the queues 3 years in a row, even though the last year, their visit, they actually invited press to come along, and there was actually...
The general manager was with them.
And the manager wrote stuff with them, so that's kind of cute. But that wasn't until, like, year 3.
So it's like Diana... Well, I guess she got a reputation for it. Like, by the third year, everyone knew she was going to do it, so this time she just, like, alerted the press, and then so it would be, like, her kids, and the general manager of the park, like, waiting in line for the log flume, just like everyone else.
Rest in peace, both log flume and Princess Diana. And a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
You're listening to an episode of Coaster Kings Radio. Today's episode is all about Thorpe Park. And first, I wanted to start the episode. We were thinking of maybe doing a Did You Know about the fact that Swarm, the phenomenal B&M wind coaster at the park, ran for the first 3 seasons with 2 backwards rows. And it would have been kind of a fun Did You Know. But then I was thinking, well, Alex was also thinking, Princess Diana, Thorpe Park.
I was like, Princess Diana went with her kids, and Sean's like, everybody knows that. I'm like, okay, we can dress it up. We can dress it up.
Just in case we do mention
the details. There's more. But yeah, so we're going to be talking about this great park with its great collection of coasters and flat rides, and that's it. There's not a whole lot else there besides a great collection of coasters and flat rides.
Let's kind of discuss what we think of the park as a whole. This is installation number 3.
4, maybe?
Or 4. 3, because we did Alton Towers and then we did Paultons and Drayton together.
Right, okay.
So this is installation 3 of the Great British Road Trip, which is a series where the episodes drop kind of every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, between other topics, but where we discuss our Great British Road Trip, where we went to a bunch of British theme parks. Of course, we went to Alton Towers, and we did Paultons Park and Drayton Manor as well. Those episodes are already live, so go back and listen to those. And today we're talking about... which is another major known theme park, especially for coast enthusiasts in the UK, and that is Thorpe Park. Thorpe Park is located pretty much in the London Metro, so it's very convenient. Not far from Heathrow. In fact, if you're a plane spotter fan like myself, it's a great little spot to watch the A380s take off. So one thing I enjoyed so much about the park, which I didn't even realize when I was making the show notes, but I'll drop it in here anyway, so I just loved seeing all the A380s from British Airways take off, and I would like track them on my little flight radar and take photos of them with my camera. So yeah, if you like planes, it's close.
Heathrow posted on their social media account a picture of Thorpe Park taken from the tower. That's how close.
That's cute. And so we are going to start...
we're going to go counterclockwise.
Sort of.
Thorpe Park is like a big hand. Like, with a bunch of fingers. It's not super easy to navigate this park, but luckily it's not very big. So, like, if it feels like kind of like a pain in the butt to get to something, at least it's like, well, you just kind of regroup at the Palm, which is like the big enclosed area, and the beachy, Amity, water parky center of the park, and regroup from there.
Like, it feels kind of weird walking, like doing the bridge into the park thing is whatever, and then you have that container hotel on the side, which okay, I'm not judging. Wally Holland does the thing with
Thorpe Shark
too, and then you enter the Dome, which sounds a lot cooler than it really is. The Dome is just like an old event space looking place with Costa Coffee for your espresso needs, and general restaurant stuff and gift stores and photo shop and whatnot. And then you enter the actual park, and where you have
the reveal is nice.
The reveal is
the
nice.
Balcony,
You're on a
the
balcony.
rotunda, and it's like
it feels strangely unnatural for a theme park to start like that.
Yeah,
because it does feel like, all right, so you walk into the Dome and you all kind of get shoehorned off to the left to get into the park, where you have to take some stairs down to the restroom level to go to the water, the water attractions. But besides that,
it reflects on the history of Thorpe Park, which, like, when it opened officially as a park in 1979, it was all about like rowboats and pools and stuff, and they still like the very center of the park is still a large pool, and like the depth charge water slide is like a focal point for the pool area of the park. And you can kind of you get hints of like old Thorpe Park in the way that you approach it and the way that some of the park is laid out, and it makes a lot more sense to do it this way when you look at how they were doing things before Tussauds Group took over in the mid-90s and like turned it into a ride park, like a big theme park.
So the first ride we'll talk about is located on its own little island, Swarm Island. Sounds like a TV show.
Oh yeah, like the whole park is an island, and then there's a little mini island that is just Swarm.
That's just Swarm. I'm going to call it Swarm.
Swarm Island.
Even though according to the park map, it doesn't really have like a name, but it's Swarm Island to me.
It's definitely its own area.
And that's like my favorite island because I love wind coasters. And I need to call some people out because lately on social media, I keep posting wind coasters because I love wind coasters. For more wind coaster information, find us on the Coaster Kings anywhere online. But people are over here like talking about it being the worst B&M product line and whatnot, and I can just not agree. And I just absolutely love wind coasters. We've ridden so many all around the world.
B&M product line, that's pretty harsh.
And wind coasters are awesome. And if we're going to talk about a solid wind coaster that is now already 13 years old and runs like an absolute dream. Swarm is amazing. It has a bunch of cool elements that I think are actually quite unique. Another thing I like about this product line, and I have mentioned this before to Alex, is that I think the B&M wind coaster, there's not really that many that run alike. Like there's actually technically a clone of the Hot Go one, but one of them never opened and it sits abandoned. So even Wings of Glory in China is its own thing. And we'll do a whole episode on it called In It to Wing It. So I won't bore you too much. But generally speaking, wind coasters, they have a pretty unique layout.
There's not a single operating wind coaster that is identical to another operating wind coaster,
which is amazing. And Swarm, therefore, also has a couple of unique elements, as I like to say, which I really enjoy about this ride. And it just runs like an absolute dream.
Mm-hmm.
Alex is passionate about the theme of this coaster, so I'll let him talk about the theme.
I do love the way this is. So Thorpe Park is fascinated with like very edgy and like harsh and intense themes. It's definitely like a Tussauds era carry through. Because Alton Towers did a lot of that in the early 90s, mid 90s, with kind of just like scary, foreboding things with like Forbidden Valley and Nemesis that definitely ushered in this era of like edgy and thrilling stuff. And I always joke that like everything in Thorpe is kind of themed to the apocalypse.
Yeah, I think at Thorpe Park, I think apocalyptic.
Because you have like the lost city of Atlantis. You have this beach themed area that is
Jaws
demolished by, it's very Jawsy, but it's also been like destroyed by a hurricane. You have Nemesis Inferno, which is like a volcano erupting. And then you have Swarm, which is like an alien apocalypse theme. And everything it takes place, like Swarm takes place in present day. And there's all of these like demolished structures and vehicles and stuff flipped over. There's like an ambulance flipped on its hind end. There's a crashed aircraft fuselage and wing. The station, the operator booth is an ambulance that's upside down. Like
I think this was definitely, and you can tell this is one of the later projects before the Smiler incident for the chain, because the theming here, I think it was one of the last hurrahs of that era of Merlin, or the dedication to the kind of theming. Because even if you look at, you've got the crash plane, and so you dive under the wing, and there's an engine smoking, and like the tail of the aircraft is off to the side, and then there's a billboard you fly through that has the advertisement for the airline. I always kind of thought it was funny because there's so many planes taken off because they're right by Heathrow, so all of it kind of really played into itself. And then having the water fountains, having the helicopter on the lake with like a little pier. I mean, like
Yeah.
There was so much dedication to theming on this ride, and I haven't even talked about the church much.
Yeah. The theming, the church is probably my favorite detail with the story going that like the queue leads into the church and everybody's in the church because like they're asking for forgiveness for their sins before they're inevitably carried off by the aliens and killed. The whole setup around the ride was just as dark and as foreboding as imaginable, almost like depressing, but it's still so compelling that you can't help but get wrapped up in it. And like when every time a train dispatches, like somebody on the radio is like, it's like bow your heads and pray, like because you're gonna get carried off and eaten or killed. And then like the giant rock music, like crescendo comes in as the train leaves the station. It's just great. It's just great. It's a great looking ride, and a lot of it has to do with the theming.
And of course, like a good wing coaster, I think needs to have good near miss elements or kind of really take advantage of the shaping of the trains being so wide and flat in a way. And by having the dive in, below the aircraft wing and having the wing dip over the water where the helicopter is, doing the slow roll, which is like a signature move of a B&M wing coaster, and having it throughout the station over where the people are boarding. I think layout-wise, they had a pretty wide plot to work with. They could have actually done quite a few things, and they got kind of creative. And despite the layout not being that long,
it's not a huge ride.
Every moment on the ride really does count, and it had its nicely balanced. You start off with, of course, your lift hill, but then you have your pretty typical wing over dive elements, and this one flips in the opposite direction and then dives down almost at like a pretty decent angle in the opposite direction, and then in order to clear space for a giant 0G roll, which that all flows very well. And then after that you have kind of like, how do you describe that?
Like an inclined loop.
Yeah, it's like an inclined loop, and then it's followed by a very low kind of like helix moment, and it's so intense. Like you will gray out on that.
It is such a prolonged directional, like going through the inclined loop and then going through that dirt turn before finally pulling out into the corkscrew in the opposite direction. It's intense.
And I think this is the only
such a great moment.
I think this is the only wing coaster, if I'm not mistaken, that has like such a pronounced inclined loop. And I could be wrong, but I don't
think any other wing coaster has one.
That felt like a really unique moment. And then that helix moment after it. And of course you have then your corkscrew, and then you turn into the really slow moving roll over the station, and then you have a mid course. So mid course really like the final breaks, and then almost like Tatsu, you have like kind of like a drop off of it into another set of breaks.
Yeah, sort of like Krake, where like the first brake run is actually on top of the final brakes, and it does a little sloped U-turn. A lot of the wing coasters do that. Wild Eagle at Dollywood has like the sloped brakes, and then the
later B&Ms in general like doing that a lot. I mean, if you look at Silver Bullet, same thing.
Yeah,
you slow down and you do a turn. Anyway, but layout wise, it has a height, it has the speed, and I think the most notable about Swarm is that it runs so well.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about Chessington in a different episode, but of course, we got right next to Thorpe Park. There's another major theme park within the same chain for the UK. It's Chessington Worlds of Adventure, and there they have a newer generation launched B&M wing coaster, shuttle coaster. And I tell you, that thing runs kind of like trash. Like, new B&M does not run well. We know that already. Alex and I are about to do a little tour about the US. We're going to do Raptera soon. We're going to do Wrath of Rakshasa soon. We actually haven't done Iron Menace yet, but I can't wait to find out how it runs.
Oh, Iron Menace. That's the other new, like, recent B&M that has the inclined loop.
Oh, true, but it's not a wing, though.
No. But it'll feel like one a little bit.
So, and then based on our experience with the SeaWorld family coasters, which also kind of run like trash, it's really clear to me that Swarm is like, in my opinion, like golden era B&M. Like they were doing cool wing coasters, intense, and there's not an inch of vibration on that.
I will say it's not
an inch
bad.
Of vibration.
On the inside seats, Sean always sits on the outside because of his long legs. I sit on the inside. And I didn't notice a huge difference between Mandrill Mayhem and Swarm because I'm always sitting on the inside. But if it flaps its wings really bad on Mandrill Mayhem, like that's something worth like taking into account when you like review a ride or mentally like rank a ride or talk about the way like these coasters are like 12 years apart, and one of them just definitely feels like it runs better.
Yeah.
And it's not the one that opened last year.
Yeah, Swarm just runs like a dream. And I'm actually quite impressed that it runs that well. So there's other older B&M wings that maybe don't run as well. But we rode Swarm both sides, front and back.
Mm-hmm.
And it just ran super well. It ran super well. In fact, I think
that's easily our favorite coaster at the park. Easily.
We're going to do a ranking at the end of the episode now, I've decided.
Oh, yeah, we can do that.
Because I kind of like doing that. I think we may have done that for...
for Alton Towers.
Either way...
Like, we gave everything, like, a score. Like...
Oh, yeah, we should do a real-time score giving. I guess we'll just decide on that.
Yeah.
And then that'll be the end of the episode.
Yeah.
So, leaving Swarm Island, let's go ahead and talk about some of the smaller rides.
So, the Flying Fish is the park's original coaster, and in the 80s, when they built it, it was, of course, part of the Space Mountain craze. Every park wanted an indoor space-themed coaster. That was just what you did. So Thorpe's is just a little Mac Blauer ensign that was in a building somewhere in the middle of the park. And then it closed and was in storage for quite some time. And then they resurrected it when they added Swarm to help kind of flesh out that side of the park, because there wasn't really anything besides the water park entrance on that side of the park between like Swarm and everything else. So Flying Fish is like sitting right underneath the Swarm. It's a cute ride. It's funny. There's like no kids at this park. Thorpe Park is very almost like anti-kid.
It was all adult riding this like family powered coaster, and it went around like 7 times.
Yeah,
like that. And it was never.
It was funny. I've never felt less sheepish about like riding a kiddie coaster, because this park there wasn't a single person. I don't think there was a single person under the age of 20 in that train. Like, that park is just so anchored in 20 somethings and like appealing to 20 somethings and so much that like there's no kiddie rides, there's no kiddie area. There's a few rides that qualify as like family rides as kiddie rides, but they don't. It's just everything that's family friendly that's there is a holdover from when Thorpe was still competing with Chessington instead of being.
I mean, that whole little Amity Island area and the original area of the park really does feel like that. Like a very different concept of what the rest of the park around it was really ended up being.
Yeah. Somewhere along the way, they kind of, like with Chessington and Thorpe being so close to each other and Tussauds Group owning them both, they decided to make one the thrill park and one the family park. And that's extremely evident when you think about how Samurai, the Mondial Top Scan from Chessington, was relocated to Thorpe as part of like the early 2000s like rebranding of Thorpe into like a major thrill park. And then another like really like I think it's the oldest attraction in the park. I don't know if there's much left. Well, I guess Flying Fish would be the oldest because it opened in the 80s, but in its current incarnation, it's fairly new. Depth Charge opened in 1990, and it hasn't changed much since. And it's just like a traditional classic 4-lane wet dry slide that empties out by the pool area.
That's a pretty decent theming. So what I kind of mentioned earlier, what's so weird about entering the park is when you enter the park and you go through the dome, and then you walk, what you hit really is like a couple of pools, a water slide, which is what we're just, with Depth Charge. And then, the first thing your eye really hits is like a tidal wave of giant water ride. Another water slide, which we'll talk about in a little bit too. There's a Storm Surge.
So the
whole idea is like you kind of spit out in this like tropically themed water park looking area. That is like the only way to get into the park. So you have to either take a pathway through that in either direction to get to like what the major attractions are these days. So it feels kind of weird. But yeah, the first thing you see when you enter the park really is Depth Charge. Just some racer 4-lane slide.
Oh yeah,
yeah. It's so
all
funny.
about water rides.
Yeah,
all about the water rides at Thorpe. Like before,
Tussauds took
island, over,
right?
It was the whole point was like being on the water, getting wet. I mean, at one point, this park had a log flume, a rapids ride, a pool, water slides, and the giant Shoot the Chute tidal wave was the first major expansion for the park after Tussauds Group took over. They didn't even have a signature coaster yet. They had only one coaster, which was the No Way Out indoor coaster, which is just a Vekoma family coaster.
Yeah.
So prior to them opening their first proper signature coaster, Colossus, they were already fleshed out with like 5 major water attractions. And being a water ride park is still sort of their legacy.
It's still kind of weird for a park that's located in the UK.
Look, when it's hot and the sun is shining, like
Oh, the
People,
2 years,
the Brits are
2 days in the year.
The Brits are gonna do it. They're gonna take advantage of it. They're gonna get wet. They're gonna go to the pool.
Like Alex just mentioned, No Way Out, or some people may know it as X No Way Out, is the Vekoma Enigma roller coaster, which is really just like a 5-vehicle, 10-passenger max train system.
Just a glorified roller skater.
It really is like a big indoor roller skater. Currently, it's themed to The Walking Dead, so now it's called The Walking Dead The Ride. Typical theme for this park, if you think about it.
Another apocalyptic event theme.
So I will say you have to now queue outside because the indoor queue is now part of the walkthrough. So waiting outside can be a little bit warm and annoying, and it's very not pretty to look at. It's like a little plaza of switchbacks. That aside, I mean, it's themed to being in some back of the building somewhere. Like it's obviously it's themed to The Walking Dead, so it's all themed to being kind of apocalyptic and deserted anyway. So that kind of works out for them, which I think is a theory. I think we kind of theorized that if you seem everything to the apocalypse and being abandoned and whatnot, if you don't maintain it, it still looks kind of appropriate.
It still looks intentional.
So, like, I mean, whoever thought that in the creative and maintenance department's very clever because
I think
you never
Time Warner and Merlin were both, or I guess Tussauds Group were both really all in with that kind of idea, doing like Gotham City stuff and doing like the Forbidden Valley. It was all like, if we make something that is supposed to be destroyed, you don't have to spend a lot of money to maintain it. It's not like fantasy areas with bright colors or adventure areas with expensive high maintenance foliage. It's like if you want something to look like the other side of the tracks, you build it one time and you just let it sit.
Always the other side of the tracks. So anyway, that's kind of the feeling of this ride. But then when you enter the building, you have your usual valet check, which actually is not that usual for Thorpe, but it is usual for Alton Towers. Mm-hmm. So you check your bag and then you walk in, and then first you start with a walkthrough, which is not super spectacular for this. I kind of remember being a little bit antsy about it because I don't know what to expect. I don't like air cannons or jump scares.
It was more of like the anticipation of something that maybe was going to be scary, and then you just kind of get to the station.
But it's amazing to see how long these walkways are because I'm pretty sure the station for this is actually at the very end of the building.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of really walk your way through the entire ride building before you get to the station. The station's very small. Because the trains are so small. So again, 10-passenger roller skater trains. Alex and I had to get really close and comfortable to get in. And they do make everyone ride together. Like it has to be 2 riders per
row. Yeah, they don't allow single people in the row.
Which is fine. Ride itself, ride's like a intense roller skater. It's quite intense. Mm-hmm. Layout didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I was kind of expecting, maybe it'll go back or something because I didn't know much about it. I was very wrong in that regard.
It's pretty straightforward. There's the one mid-course brake run where the ride stops, and every incarnation of this ride, something takes place on this brake run. I remember like smoke cannons on my ride, or like mist cannons or something on that little stopped brake run. And then it has this very like lurching sort of motion to like pushing the train over the edge. And I don't know if that's like just a mechanical quirk or if it's intentional, but
that seemed intentional to me.
It does seem intentional. And I thought that it was intentional just for The Walking Dead because they have this very clever theme gag where you're supposed to be in like an escape vehicle and he can't get the engine to start. And so you're like lurching forward, like on the clutch trying to move. But then I found out that apparently it's always done that. Like it has always done this like lurching.
Because it doesn't feel like it's struggling to get the train out.
No.
I've never had a coaster.
It's got to be related to, I mean, that's like the whole gimmick with the Enigma coaster was that it was Vekoma's like 90s attempt at doing something like doing a special effects coaster, which like the whole concept of doing something like that was very in like its infancy. Now it's quite common for roller coasters to do those kinds of visual and physical gags, stuff like 13 and Hagrid's and like the kind of stuff that Vekoma does for Disney. But at the time in 1996, it was much more uncharted territory. But yeah, aside from being like a tedious queue experience because of the low capacity of this ride, it's a good attraction.
I think thematically speaking, it's actually not terrible. There's quite a few little props and little effects on the ride and screens. And if you kind of can look past the hokiness of the installation of it, it's actually quite enjoyable. I think I wouldn't wait longer than like 15 to 20 minutes for it.
No.
But I mean, I enjoyed it for what it was. Yeah.
And if it's like raining, it's a good one to do. As long as you're already inside the building when it starts raining. Otherwise, you're camped out outside. But yeah, True. That's technically in the Calamity Cove area. The water ride, like the hub of the park, even though it's not themed as such. It has like a 50s beach town vibe, which is really cute. And the fact that it takes place in the 50s is, I think, a reference not only to Jaws taking place in like mid-century America, but also with stealth being the 50s muscle car theme.
Yeah, and there's like a little New Orleans area there.
Yeah, and the New Orleans area is new. The New Orleans area was themed to Angry Birds.
Oh yeah.
And it was a reskin of the bumper cars and the existing detonator drop tower into an Angry Birds theme. And then
Good choice.
yeah.
Speaking of which, I kind of want to play the game again. I miss it.
What game? Angry Birds?
Angry Birds.
It's cute.
Oh my god, when the iPads and stuff were coming out, I loved that. The
my God.
iPhone and stuff. Yeah.
I remember when Angry Birds, it was like 2011.
Can you still buy it? Can you still play it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's so many different like versions of it now. You can
Maybe I should get myself back into it.
Yeah. Oh, the ad campaign worked. Anyway, so yeah, the New Orleans area was like part of the 2024 Sparkle project for Thorpe, where they're like going through and like repainting everything and making everything look better. Maybe not perfect, but like trying to improve conditions inside the park.
So it's the same year they changed the logo
Yeah.
to the retro logo.
Yeah. And they changed the branding of the park too. It used to be like an island like no other, and now it's like Feel Good Thrills.
Feel Good Thrills.
But yeah, so you have the New Orleans area, which is strangely wholesome. There's no apocalyptic edge to it, except for like if you go to New Orleans and go too hard on Bourbon Street, you feel like you're gonna die.
So should we talk about Tidal Wave first or Storm Surge
There's
first?
a whole lot to talk about.
So Tidal Wave, I think, is one of the more iconic rides that they have.
It is pretty iconic.
Because Tidal Wave is a massive shoot-to-shoot, I believe.
It's intimate.
It's intimate, yeah. And I will say it is like iconic for giant splashdown, and it's kind of theming where like the church or whatever building you're in as the station's like sunk into the water. It sits in the lake. You used to have a giant like atlasy globe that was on fire. That's no longer there, unfortunately. Maybe it was just a tank. To me, it looked like a globe, but
it's very Waterworldy.
Yeah, it was very Waterworld. It totally feels like Waterworld, like, and again, an apocalyptic theme. I think I enjoy the ride, off-ride, of course, because of the giant splash. It's kind of spectacular, and I think it's kind of iconic. And because the park's shape and size, the ride is quite big, but because it's Thorpe Park, and Thorpe Park is not big, it really feels like a massive ride, like, like one of the headliners of the park. I quite enjoy its presence. And then what I feel like feels kind of out of place is Storm Surge. The Storm Surge is one of the kind of like raft slidey rides.
Yeah, Whitewater West raft slide.
Which you see them occasionally. Six Flags America famously had like the Penguin, or you have the
Six Flags New England has one still.
Yeah, Hansa Park has one. That was actually pretty well
in Iowa has a smaller one. Hansa Park's is cool looking.
Yeah, because they rethemed it all to be pirate themed.
This one has the same tricolor red, yellow, blue
as all the other
color scheme that came off the shelf, and it has just kind of this vague.
And it just sits there,
being
like right next
like
to Tidal Wave.
Plumbing.
Yeah, and X.
It's like in front of
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, the ride. Yeah, not much to it.
Yeah, it just feels a little out of place to me. I mean, it works because Thorpe Park has all those water rides in the middle, so at that point, and what's an extra water ride?
It's popular.
But it feels out of place just like everything else in the entrance to the park. But at the same time, it's very Thorpe. It's very different. And it is luckily all kind of contained because you do have all those kind of like water parky looking water rides and Tidal Wave all in like the center area in front of the park.
And then so when you pass the New Orleans area, which is literally just their Fabry drop tower, which is a small drop tower, but apparently a very good one. I haven't ridden it myself, but I hear it's good. And then the bumper cars. You go past that, and then there's the Amity Raceway subsection that is home to Stealth. Stealth is a classic, like a modern classic. She's going to be 20 next year. She is open for the season, but she was not ready for us when we were there.
She was cycling for the first time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She came to life on our visit, but it's not open for us.
But then it took another couple days.
It's a good ride. I know people who prefer it over Hyperia in that park, Martin and Charlotte.
That's crazy to me. Hyperia too.
Or I think they prefer, or maybe it's just that they like to session it in the mornings when everybody's messing around with Hyperia. Like when I went in October, I got 2 rides on it before the crowds descended on it. And I was lucky because once that ride opens, the crowds get insane on that ride.
It's a pretty short ride.
It is a short ride. If you've ridden Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm, Accelerator I still think is a much better version of this ride with the lap bars and the double, like the figure 8 maneuver, kind of giving you time to bask in the wildness of the speed, whereas Stealth is literally a tiny King to Ka, like a literally King to Ka 50% size. 200
Except
feet
for you
tall.
don't do the full flip.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, you don't do the spiral either. But you do have the little airtime hump.
Yeah, how I would describe it, it's like imagine accelerator with the Kindercart trains, and then when you come back down off of the top hat, you have like just like your brake is in the form of a hill.
Yeah.
Like you just brake into the hill. So
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
And it's a good ride. You'll have to check it out. You need a Woking layover. You pick up a layover there. And then you need
a layover in London
because we have
annual passes.
We have our passes. We have our Merlin passes. And unlike Rita, which is really similar to one that we've already ridden, this ride is technically a unique layout for you. The only other time that this layout was built was Saturn at Space World in Fukuoka, Japan. And that ride has been for sale for about 15 years. It might get sold. Who knows? It would be interesting if somebody bought it and did like the Zamperla thing to it, like Thunderbolt at Playland in Vancouver, what they did with that old little Intamin accelerator coaster. But at this point, like, it's been 15 years. Who knows? But yeah, it's a great ride. It's still one of the best launches in the world. It's got the same like 0 to 82 or 0 to 80. And
isn't the fast accelerating coaster in Europe?
It is, yeah, definitely.
And isn't it like only second to accelerator?
It's second, yes. At this point, it's second only. I think this one, Stealth, Accelerator, and Max Force, I think, have like a very close race for operating roller coasters rate of acceleration.
I mean, yeah, so for Stealth, there's not much to talk about. I think Stealth is pretty obvious. Everyone kind of knows what Stealth does and what it doesn't. Mostly what it doesn't. And so, okay, next. So right next to it, there's a Rapids ride. Which we didn't ride because it wasn't open for the season.
It wasn't open for the season yet. This is now kind of the jungle area of the park that has the little banana-shaped swinging ship and Nemesis Inferno. It's behind the New Orleans area. There's also a teacup ride that's in between the Rapids ride and Stealth, and I don't know if the teacup ride is supposed to be I think it's supposed to be part of Amity, but it feels kind of like maybe it would be part of the New Orleans area. I'm not entirely sure.
I thought it was New Orleans.
That would make sense. New Orleans could use more rides.
Drunk drivers.
Oh my God. That would be very Thorpe Park of them. But yeah, so there's a big Rapids ride. That was one of the few rides that is still open today. That
Roomba Rapids, which is the same theme as Inferno.
Yeah, it just wasn't like always themed to jungle.
Yeah.
That came later. But yeah, Diana rode that with her kids. That and Depth Charge, I think, are the only two rides left from like the late 80s, early 90s era.
Where if it wasn't water, there wasn't Thorpe Park.
Yeah. And then so next to it is Nemesis Inferno, which is, in my mind, the ride that competes with Swarm for best ride in the park.
Before we talk about that Detonator, we'll talk about it a little bit because
the little battery drop tower.
It looks like it's kind of nothing, but for the park, it's quite important because there's a drop tower, and I guess there aren't that many big drop towers in the UK anyway.
Not without Apocalypse.
Yeah, so like right now that it's somehow the biggest drop ride in the UK because even Croc Drop is not that big, and of course the little thing in Alton Towers doesn't count. So
the tower at Flamingo Land was a decent size. The SNS tower.
Oh, that was good. I guess the second in command then. Yeah, Detonator is actually kind of unique because it was one of the first modern day drop rides, like single tower up and lift up, drop down.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like almost 25 years old. That is 25 years old.
Yeah. So it's themed into the same kind of lore, if I'm not mistaken, as the rest of Nemesis Inferno because it really sits on the same plot as Nemesis Inferno. Nemesis Inferno, as the name implies, is like a follow-up to the other Nemesis, except for this one's volcano themed.
The sequel.
For those that are watching a video of us, we are
too hard to see. It's
wearing Nemesis Inferno hoodies.
Inferno.
Oh my God, maybe I should stand up and show people the back.
Show everyone the back. Well, you can't just. Oh yeah, there you go. Your shirt tail. Nemesis Inferno. We bought these hoodies because the logo kind of looks like it's like a national park logo. Sean was describing it to me. He saw it in the gift shop and he was like, "So it's a Nemesis Inferno hoodie and it looks like a national park logo." And I was like, "Okay." And then he showed it to me and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool."
I wanted to buy like Smiler merch, but Alex thought Smiler
basic.
Even though I think it's super cute.
Smiler is like the Katy Perry of roller coasters. Like,
you shut up.
Am I wrong?
Yeah.
No.
Smiler is legendary and Katy Perry is not. So Anyway, so we bought this hoodie because this is like actually the last ride of our whole trip.
Mm-hmm.
Was it? Yeah.
Great rides on it, man. We sessioned the heck out of this ride because we'd only ridden it twice. It opened late on our visit, and we made friends with the staff.
It opened very late,
the
like
entrance.
3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, we'd already ridden everything and even gotten multiple rides on some stuff. But we made friends with the staff members at the entrance of the ride, and then when we came back at the end of the day to get one more ride on it, they let us ride 4 times without even leaving the station. And the ride operator even like moved other parties around so that we could stay on the train, and like they had already shut down the queue for the front row.
So they let us ride.
They let us ride in the front, and
they took good care of us.
They took the staff, man. The crew at Nemesis Inferno took great care of us, and it's a great ride.
It is a great ride.
Great ride.
So I think everyone always kind of thinks about Nemesis as like, you know, the one at Alton Towers as being the inverted coaster of the world. And while they're not completely wrong, Nemesis Inferno is a very solid, like, second place. And some people I know even like it better than Nemesis. I can understand why, because Nemesis, you think maybe, it's going to do more, because when you think of Nemesis, you think of like a big coaster, trenches and all that. But really, like, lengthwise, they're pretty similar. They're both not super long. They're also not super short.
They both have a loop, a 0G roll, and 2 corkscrews.
Yeah. So Nemesis Inferno, it starts off going through a tunnel below the station that kind of like has a double S turn in it, and then you fly into the lift at high speed.
Yeah, pre-lift on a B&M.
Yeah, and it's quite
unique.
Cool. It's very unique. Like Alex said, there's not really any other pre-lifts like that. And then the layout itself is snappy like a Batman clone. I mean, it doesn't waste any time. You got a vertical loop. You have your 0G roll that dives straight into a corkscrew, and then it's actually an interlocking corkscrew, which is unique for a B&M invert. You know, like the floorless are
they do it all the time.
Have it, but this one is the only one of an invert that does it. And they have like a really speedy figure 8 with a helix over some really great landscaping, and then you slide into the brakes, and the queue you work your way up like a hill, like a mountainy hill, like the volcano, and then you enter a hut, and then like you're in the volcano, and the presence minus the exit is phenomenal. The exit is over some maintenance road, but
the exit is kind of funny.
Like once you're done the ride, like you're done.
Yeah, the experience is over once you are out of the station.
But really, I think the actual ride layout, it's great. I think it's one of the better inverts in the world.
It's absolutely. The more I've ridden this ride, the more I've grown to love it, and the sturdiness of it. It runs so fast, and
I feel like it has that Bermuda alien encounter kind of aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
You know, like tropical
something
island
about
volcano.
A big foam volcano.
Yeah. And
like
then,
weeds growing on it.
Yeah, and then it's it's an invert.
The layout, it reminds me of it's got like silver bullet level of design precision, excuse me. And it's also opened the same year in 2004. So it's like silver bullet level of like precision.
What's so weird though
and
is
like
that
flight deck intensity.
Silver bullet to me feels like a whole different generation of B&M invert.
Yeah, because it's like
the fact that they're the same year is so weird to me.
Yeah.
Because to me, this feels like an original generation B&M invert. It feels like, like Alex said, the
like
Batman / flight deck era. It does not to me at all feel like the era of Phaeton.
It's because it doesn't have
Silver Bullet,
a Cobra roll or an Immelman. And I think Cobra rolls and Immelmans doing the half loop, half cork, or half loop, half roll that is employed by doing those maneuvers.
It feels even like more classic than stuff like...
It literally feels like pre-Raptor.
Yeah, it feels pre-Raptor.
Like 1993.
It feels more classic than Alpengeist. It feels more classic than the one here in Tampa. Montu.
Yeah.
It feels more classic than pretty much any of them.
Yeah.
Afterburn.
It's literally just feels like it's like from the same era as the LG Nemesis. Like it really does do a nice job of paying homage to the original Nemesis by capturing that era.
And it runs better than the original, than current Nemesis.
Yeah. And even though, I mean, it always ran better than the OG Nemesis 2 because it was newer. Now it runs better because the new Nemesis is, runs a little loose because it's a new B&M. But I think for its entire existence, it has run better than Nemesis. And the only reason why it gets ranked below Nemesis is because Nemesis's layout and setting is so remarkable. But this ride is just fabulous in its own right. I mean, we rode it 4 times in a row, and I'm not big for sessioning coasters these days.
Especially on inverts, so it's gonna be so intense. This thing does pull your feet. It's a very intense ride.
Like pins and needles on the feet. By the time you hit that double helix, But yeah, if you're going to session and invert, this is a great one. What a
Yeah, I thought it
great-
was really creative because the way they fit it in the park, it is super tight. Like it's a super tight little layout, and manages to just do it all while feeling very natural and not super forced. And the color scheme of it, and the aesthetic, and the landscaping, and the tropical lushness of it. It helped that it was like a really nice, sunny, warm day. It was quite hot
it
out.
was running so fast.
But also it just works with the aesthetic because tropical themes just don't work that well in European parks, except for when the weather's like really nice.
Yeah.
Which it was. But yeah, overall, I think Nemesis Inferno is real high on our list. Top 3 in the park, 100%.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Yeah, it's a 3-way
even
race
know where
to
it
the
is.
top with the 2 B&Ms and Hyperia.
Anyway, so next we're going to move towards
Darren Brown's Ghost Train.
Darren Brown,
Just kidding.
Right in front of it, yeah.
It's just called Ghost Train now. And we didn't ride it. It was closed, and then it wasn't, and then it was closed again. I've never ridden it. I don't know anything about it.
I didn't care much.
All I know is that everybody hates that ride, and everyone says it's terrible. And it's already been rebranded like twice because it's just so bad. Used to be a VR ride. Now it's not VR anymore. But it's a big ride, and it was peak like Merlin overpromise, underdeliver era. Like everything that has ever been said about 13 at Alton Towers and the way that was overpromise, underdeliver, Ghost Train is even more guilty of that, apparently, because from what I can tell, from what I've been told, there is not like a single redeeming quality of Ghost Train. Even with no expectations, apparently you go into Ghost Train and you are still disappointed.
So what I also think is kind of legendary for this park, and we'll talk about it next, is Samurai.
Oh, yeah.
Samurai is a
Mondial top scan.
Top scan. And I was going to say Spin Doctor, because wasn't it called Spin Doctor RCT3?
Spin Doctors are the pendulum ones, the Mondial star shape ride.
But why was it called Spin Doctor?
Oh, no. Spin Doctors
RCT?
are the Fabry boosters. Like Blackpool Pleasure Beach had a pair of Fabry boosters, and they were called Spin Doctors.
It's called Spin Doctor on RCT3. Hold up, maybe I'm wrong.
Well, okay, so Samurai, which was up and down all day, I think that ride has been a mechanical problem for them forever. Samurai dates back to like Tussauds era, Chessington World of Adventures, and when Tussauds Group acquired Thorpe Park, which is right next to Chessington, and for a long time directly competed.
You're right.
With
it's not
Chessington.
Spin Doctor on RCT3.
But there was something called Spin Doctor, and that was the
it was a giant
8-passenger booster ride because it was named after Blackpool's, their installation of it.
Anyway,
so when Chessington and Thorpe became like sister parks, Tussauds Group made a conscious decision to make one park a family park and one park a thrill park. Which is why Thorpe has such a unique quality of being a park that is really squarely focused on thrill rides and 20-somethings and has not much to do for kids other than the pool and some stray flat rides and water rides left over from like the 90s. So Samurai, they decided was too thrilling for the direction that they decided Chessington was going in, which is kind of ironic now because Chessington came full circle from having rides like Samurai or like Ramsey's Revenge, which was their house top spin that was quite iconic. They went from getting rid of those rides because they weren't part of like the new modus operandi for Chessington to building Mandrill Mayhem. They like worked their way back up to doing a thrilling looping launch coaster. But in the 90s, they were very keen on differentiating the two parks by...
Which makes sense, because their proximity is so close.
So
like,
close.
They almost feel like one resort.
So long story short, they took Samurai from the Asian area of the park in Chessington World of Adventures and moved it to Thorpe and kept the name the same as like a marketing thing. They were like, okay, everybody's going to know this ride from Chessington. And
Samurai is the coolest name.
Great name.
Especially for a stop scan like that.
Yeah, because it looks like a ninja star. Like, you can't go wrong. We didn't write it because...
But there's no area that's themed to that.
No, there's nothing about it makes any sense theming-wise, but they've never bothered to rename it because the name is too good. Anyway.
So it sits right next to Saw the Ride, and Saw the Ride is obviously themed to Saw, the franchise.
I'm surprised they didn't rename Samurai, like... named it something related
to like
saw blade or something because it looks like a saw trap when you think about it. It literally looks like a saw blade in its own way. So
so Saw the Ride is a custom Gerstlauer Eurofighter, pretty high capacity. He runs 8 trains sometimes. And it's themed to, of course, an apocalyptic, darkish, horrorish franchise. The Saw franchise, which is now like 10 movies deep.
Have you seen any of the songs?
I have not.
It's okay.
Anyway, so I know what it's about. Another creepy little guy on the bike with his little like Target ass
Billy.
marketing on his cheeks, like Billy from Target. And anyway, so Billy down the bike aisle, and so the ride itself runs like absolute ass. Like
the ride's terrible.
Like the ride is terrible.
The ride delivers on the promise of being a torture device themed ride because it is what is good about the ride is completely overshadowed by what is not good about the ride.
It does feel like a torture machine.
The indoor part of the ride, spoilers, sorry, there's like an indoor portion, outdoor portion. The indoor portion of the ride is great. And
except for where that buddy is like stabbed and all the blood spits up. I got soaked, bro.
Oh, yeah, I got
all the water and all the fake blood.
That comes with the territory. It's a Saw ride.
Yeah,
and it's Thorpe. You're gonna get wet. Like that's.
I will say this ride is immensely popular. The queue for the thing. Oh my god! Like
this ride.
Every freaking possible switchback and the whole queue was used.
So Hyperia was open all day,
nonstop.
Had it closed early. There was an incident and the ride closed early.
It actually reopened the last 3 minutes.
But it did reopen.
May have closed the queue for
it. But it wasn't even related to mechanical issues. It was related to line jumping, apparently, and they dumped the whole queue because that was the day after. Oh, that was the day after.
Remember, I had friends there.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't during office.
Oh, well, it may have happened that day, too. I don't know.
Anyway.
Saw had the longest line of the day, even though Hyperia, which is the brand new ride, and right next to it, was operating consistently. Saw went down a couple times, but it's really, even with the capacity not being the greatest, it's not the worst either. People just love that ride for some reason. People love to go to Thorpe Park and get tortured together on this horrible roller coaster whose only redeeming qualities are like design related and like theoretical.
Even then, the design just felt super weird to me. So you start with your indoor thing, which is like a turn, a drop, and a little roll, which is like standard for these rides. If it had an indoor part anyway.
Yeah.
And then you go up your vertical lift, standard, with your beyond vertical drop, standard. And then you have an Immelman, which is maybe not super standard, but it's okay. Like, I feel like these kind of maneuvers are pretty common.
Yeah, some of the later Eurofighters, like the Iron Shark clones, employ like the Immelman S. Well, it's more of like a rollover, but.
And then you have that overbank turn, which is pretty good. And then that's followed by an airtime hill, which is surprisingly pretty decent airtime, but it does shake through it, of course. And then you have that turn to the brake run, and then it kind of becomes kind of miserable because then the brake turn doesn't actually slow you down much, which sounds fun on paper, like, oh yeah, like a brake run without brakes, like hit me up, boy.
Then you drop
down and then
do a dive loop, and it's just miserable.
It feels like it runs way too fast to go through like that.
Yeah.
So then you run through
yourself apart.
Yeah, and then that's kind of it. Like you do your little dive loop, and then you make
it
your way
only has
to
three
run,
inversions.
Right?
For a large scale Eurofighter, it doesn't even have that many loops.
It doesn't do that much.
It's kind of similar to Mystery Mine when I think of these rides. It's sort of like Mystery Mine's evil twin, because it has like the indoor portion and then an outdoor portion. The lift hill sequence is like in the middle of the ride.
I do like Mystery Mine so much more though. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Especially because it's a double lift. It has a lot more going on.
Mystery Mine I think is a little more substantial, but I love the idea of this ride. When I rode this in 2015, it was my favorite ride in the park. It has just aged so poorly.
I think it's pretty common for Eurofighters.
It needs track work really bad.
So yeah, that's all I'm really gonna say about that. It looks really nice. Has some cool scare effects in the last part of the queue, but that's about it. And it has that valet thing. So operationally, it's pretty strong. We're running like 8 trains in one.
Yeah. Speaking of needing track work.
Yeah, before we jump into that, Colossus is in a Atlantis-themed area.
No, Colossus needs track work.
It does need track work.
That's what I'm referencing.
Well, no, that's why I said Colossus.
Oh, you said before we jump into that. What are we jumping into? What is before we're jumping into?
That area that you want to include in this list.
Oh, yeah, the
Atlantis area.
The garden of flat rides. Okay, yeah, Colossus needs track work. But it's still better than Saw.
Which we'll get to. First, we're gonna talk about Oilo Flats.
You do want to talk about the flat rides?
Yeah, but that's what I'm referencing.
Okay.
We're talking about the little garden of flat rides. It's themed to the Atlantis Lost Garden of Lost Flat Rides.
It's what it reminds. I keep calling it the Garden of Flat Rides because it reminds me of Da Vinci's Gardens of Inventions from Busch Gardens, Williamsburg, which was Anheuser-Busch's way of doing a flat ride stimulus for a park that did not have a lot of flat ride space. So they just made an area that was all flat rides. And Tussauds Group had kind of the same idea because once they bought that park, Tussauds Group gets a lot of credit for stuffing the park with coasters and like tidal wave and stuff, like big marquee rides. But not only were they building these major e-ticket rides, they were also cramming the park with flat rides very quickly because like Detonator and then the 4 flat rides in the Garden of Flat Rides. Well, I guess really they added 6 flat rides in 5 years, in addition to adding the giant Shoot the Chute and 3 e-ticket coasters. They have Quantum, which is the little Fabry magic carpet ride, which I wanted to ride. We didn't have time. I would have made more time for it if it was a Zero magic carpet, because those are the OG. But Fabry, it's better than nothing. That opened alongside with the drop tower, like because it was those are both Fabry. They have a Huss Enterprise called Eclipse. They have a KMG afterburner called Vortex, and then they have Rush, which is an SNS small swing, like the smaller stature, but still like the wide rows of seats. And that was a big deal at the time. Scream and Swings weren't as common as they are now. And also in 2005, they had the 2 flat rides from SNS, the Scream and Swing, and they added the Sky SWAT, which closed several years ago.
Didn't they only remove it last year?
Yeah, it only finally just got demolished. It's across from where Hyperia is now.
Man, that Sky Squad was another one of those legendary Thorpe Park things for me as a kid. I was like, oh my God, I wish I'd ridden one.
Me too.
Because I've seen the ones.
It was down. When I was there in 2015, I totally would have ridden it. It was down. But that's, that was the ride's legacy, was being down.
I can't remember. Wasn't the one at Six Flags New England still sitting when we went?
No, it was just the station. The queue area that they used for the Starflyer was built for Catapult. Catapult and the Whitewater West's Flume ride. It's funny how there are 3 parks in the world that have ever had a Sky SWAT, and all 3 of those parks have also had the Whitewater West Flume slide.
Funny.
Because that was what Astroworld had, the Whitewater West Flume and the Sky SWAT. And then both of those rides went to Six Flags New England. And at around that same time, both of those rides were also installed at Thorpe, clones of both of those rides. But yeah, for what it's worth, Thorpe Park did a great job adding flat rides. Oh, and if you count Samurai, that's 7. That was 7 major flat rides that they added to that park in 5 years.
But man, European parks are so much better at adding flat rides anyway. Ugh, I wish US parks should do flat ride packages. I mean, Six Flags Magic Mountain, there's unlikely you're listening to this, but if you are listening, please do me a favor and add a flat ride package.
Yeah.
Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Please.
Thank you, please.
I would like to order a Samba Tower for the plot previously occupied by Swiss Twist. Please and thanks.
I would like to order every Semperla flat. In fact, that plot should be having a Nebula
Z. Yeah, the Nebulas. Yeah.
And then I also would like to order a Endeavor. And
the Enterprise type deal. Yeah.
Literally anything else. Yeah. Anything, Magic Mountain. Please add flat rides. Do like a Samurai.
I beg. Oh, God.
On
Top
Samurai.
Scan. Well, everybody's ridden Soul Spin, so maybe it won't be as marketable. But if they took the actual Samurai ride from Thorpe Park and put it on Samurai Summit, that would,
Got a giant, what is it called again? The skyscreamers, they're called Starflyers. Oh my God, they built a giant Starflyer on Samurai Summit. I would love it. Okay, anyway back to Thorpe Park. Colossus is next on the list. Colossus, the original
roller coasters named
10 inversion intimate coaster.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, I was kind of dreading this. I will say I will say a lot of things, but I will say, first of all, that thematically speaking, it's actually quite pretty. Like when you walk, it is super well integrated. The walkway is all around. The queue is underneath the walkway and not underneath the walkway. And it's themed, of course, to Atlantis, and there's tunnels and whatnot. Having just ridden Sick a few days prior, the one in Flamingo Land, this was so nicely dressed up. And then you can get so close to the inversions, the rolls, that it feels like you are one with, when you're just walking by, it feels like you're one with the ride, which is really cool. And then I was kind of dreading riding it because I remember the trains being super uncomfortable from riding the 10 inversion coaster at the
Flamingo Land.
no, the one in Guangzhou.
Oh yeah,
We rode 10 inversion coaster
at Chimong Paradise.
Yeah, Alton Paradise, and it was highly uncomfortable. And then I was kind of dreading the way it would track because first of all, everyone's talking about how badly it tracks, and then second of all, yeah, the one that we rode in Guangzhou was also not very good. It tracked pretty poorly. So then we finally got on the ride, and then we got the front of a car, which is good. I think we got the front of a car because then my knees would be like against the seat in front of me because again the trains are terrible trains. And then the restraints are like your feet are angled and they barely fit in there. So like you always have a lot of pressure on your feet. Like your feet are burning just sitting down. And then as a tall person, I guess. And then you have to put the restraint on, and then that's pretty tight because it's like, classic intimate hydraulic early era. So trains are pretty awful. But then when we dispatched, the thing tracked really well, actually.
Yeah.
Like it ran really well. I actually enjoyed it surprisingly much more than the new one in Flamingo Land.
I remember enjoying it in 2015, but I just didn't expect it to still be good. But yeah, we did our one ride on it. It wasn't something that we were like clamoring to ride again just because the loading process felt uncomfortable. Once you were leaned back on the lift hill and going through the ride, it didn't feel as uncomfortable as it felt just sitting in there. I do think these rides are just kind of goofy with the gratuitous barrel roll elements just to achieve the record. But in its day in 2002, when Tuzo's group was 10 toes in for Thorpe Park, a 10 coaster.
This is a crazy, spectacular ride for them.
It was iconic. It was a great choice for them to like really make a splash. This was added in 2002, and then they turned right around and built Nemesis Inferno in 2003. They were so eager to turn this park into a coaster park to make it the Alton Towers of London. There was just no hesitation with that, and I think it was a great choice.
Well, that's funny. I mean, on that topic, how junior or like how new everything really is at park. That park is they built all of their signature attractions back to back to back, and everything is quite new.
Yeah, they don't have a single coaster they don't have a signature coaster.
I mean, Colossus is the original major coaster, the icon, and that thing is barely 23 years old.
Yeah. Because if you count the other two as basically what they are, which is family coasters, kiddie coasters.
I mean, every 2 years they were just throwing in there like major world renowned coasters.
They were hungry. I mean, from 2000, I think from like 1999 to 2006, they were averaging 2 rides a year. And one of those rides was usually a major e-ticket ride, or like I think it was 2000 or 2000. There was one year where they built 3 flat rides at the same time. The year that they added Detonator and Vortex and Quant, I think all 3 of those opened at the same time. And then 2005 with the double S&S flat rides, like they were seriously 2 or 3 at a time, to get this park like up to speed and to make it like the Alton Towers of the south side of England. But yeah, that pretty much covers Thorpe Park up to their latest and greatest.
The 2024 everybody 236-foot tall, tallest coaster in the UK, fastest coaster in the UK. Kind of like the next big thing for you guys. And everyone's talking about, like Alex said. And that, of course, is Hyperia, which is the Mac installation, the Mac Hypercoaster.
Is Hyperia up to the hype?
No. No, I don't think it is. Absolutely no offense to those Hyperia fans. There is some hype.
There's some hype.
And there's some Rhea. And I don't know.
That's so dumb.
I just don't feel like... Okay, let me just put it this way. I think it's a really good roller coaster.
Great coaster. Solid 9.
But is it like, the UK's best freaking roller coaster, Europe's best? No, I don't think it is. I mean, like, I can list like 3 or 4 coasters I like better in the UK.
I can list like 2 coasters in that park that I like better.
I think it's top 3, but it's...
And I think... it's not to say that anything is objectively better or worse or great, but like for us as enthusiasts, it's like it just didn't have enough.
For me, it lacked the whole package.
Yeah.
It felt like, thematically speaking, there was not much going on except
Oh
for
my
like
God.
a very generic aesthetic that is like a 2024 hotel room where it's like silver and gold. Black and gold touches. And then the ride itself, I mean, the queue is literally just plain switchbacks. Nothing going on.
They did the
station
piece.
is like a container. Nothing going on.
It's a bunch of plastic.
I mean, it's still better in Radford
particle
Rakshasa,
thing.
but like we're talking about the UK parks.
You can tell all the money went to the coaster, and by the time they had to like it's like when you play Roller Coaster Tycoon and you spend all of your money on the track, and then you go to build your exit and entrance and your queue and stuff, and you like are waiting for more people to buy hot dogs and drinks so that you have enough money to finish building your pathway.
Pretty much.
That's how this feels.
But I will say, I say that a lot, don't I? I will say thing.
I will say. You also say
God, am I saying
on a
a lot?
global scale. You say that like
Oh my
all the
God.
time. But no, it's okay.
Self-awareness.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Either way, I will say that layout-wise, the ride has a lot of really unique things, and I think that's what people focus on. Rightfully so. Like there's some really cool moments, like that first drop inverting on itself and like doing a 180, pretty much being a completely ejected airtime the entire drop, followed by really big swooping elements that like invert on themselves and out of bank that becomes an inversion. Like it does some really cool stuff. I think it's spectacular. The stall that turns into a dive loop. I mean I feel like pretty much the first 4 elements are all completely unique to Hyperia and really do feel revolutionary and feel so grand. You're out of your seat the whole time and you're just in the air flying like crazy. And I understand why people say this is the best coaster in the UK. But then you hit some brakes, slow you down tremendously, followed by an out of bank turn, and then whoop into the brakes. And I'm like, oh man, like this ride could have gone on for like 10 minutes. You're not going to tell me there was no space because there's so much space around there.
I do feel like the ride is an adequate length, and it reminds me a lot of Shambhala in the sense where like they wanted to go tall, but they didn't really want to naturally expel all of that momentum, either because of money or space or whatever. But like it feels like it's missing, a hypercoaster finale of bunny hops in the same way that Shambhala feels like it's missing that, because it just hits the brakes and then turns around and hits more brakes and it's like over. And what you feel like you've got is like an excellent first 2/3 of a ride. And the last third is like not great because it's all about mechanically using that momentum and redirecting you into the station.
So rumor has this ride was actually not designed for Thorpe Park, and that it was bought because the original designer or the original park that it was meant for fell through, and so now this ride was being manufactured.
It's interesting because it does fit
or was manufactured
so nicely.
It fits nicely, but to me, it just feels like it could have done so much more. And there's no excuse about the space thing, because when you look there, there's the whole like parts of the lock room are still sitting in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is space, and they could have done more. They could have done another loop around.
I think it just came down to money.
You don't think it was designed for the park? Because I hear that a lot. People talk about that a lot.
I think that if they wanted to spend more money on the project, they could have. And if it really was designed already for another park, that means that they probably got it for a good deal. And
they weren't going to modify anything.
It was like, I guess what I'm saying is like maybe Thorpe Park is just lucky to have a coaster of that scope right now.
You are right. It does feel like it fits in nicely. And it is a really unique coaster for the country. It's for the world, really, on a global scale. Mm-hmm. It is a very unique coaster, and like I said, the first four or five things it does are completely unique to the ride. I just wish it didn't end so abruptly.
I like it, and I don't even mind the way that it ends. I feel like it does a good coaster. It does like 4 or 5 things really well, and then it's over. Thank you. Mm-hmm. He was styling my hair. And it doesn't bother me that the ride is short. I personally am like quite out of breath by the end of that ride.
Yeah, you were always saying you couldn't even hold your hand.
My issue, that part where you do the hammerhead stall turn that turns into an upside down roll. I kept all 3 times that I've ridden it. I tried to have my hands up the whole time, and then I eventually gave up because it was just too much hanging upside down.
Man, but now think about it, the ride is so good.
It's a cool ride, and it's totally unique. It doesn't remind me of many rides. The closest thing that it reminds me of actually is a Skyrocket 2 clone, because the drop feels like a giant blown up version of rolling off the top and then into the big half loop. So the first 2 elements of that ride kind of remind me of a Skyrocket 2 clone. And then when it does the hammerhead stall dive thing, that's feel like a truly ape shit, like mad scientist,
Very unique.
pushing the limits of human endurance kind of shit for me. And then it does the the big stall into the dive loop, and by then I'm kind of spent. Like I am worn out.
The more I think about this coaster, I do realize that I love it so much, and that it could have been higher on my list. But then I just remember now that the way that it tracked was actually very terrible.
There's two things about the ride that bother me the most.
Bumping the whole time, and we rode it twice.
There's one train apparently that runs better than the other, which is dumb. It's a Mack Rides coaster, so it's gonna vibrate. And
Stardust doesn't vibrate that.
Stardust vibrates a little bit.
Not like the bouncing nothing.
Yeah. And really it's just too much of your experience on Hyperia right now is a crapshoot. Are you gonna get the good train? Are you gonna get a good seat? You can't queue for the front, you can't queue for the back, you can't queue for the front of a car. Like you just get what you get. Which is just annoying. On the one hand, I do feel like this is a ride where all the elements are so massive that sitting in the front versus sitting in the back doesn't have a huge effect on your ride experience. But like if I want to sit in the front of a car and not have my face like facing the back of a headrest, I should be able to choose to do that. And then again with the train, you have one train that doesn't run as well as the other. That means 50% of the rides going out are not as good as they could be. And
maybe it's me, but this brings me to a bigger topic, and that's like I think Mac is kind of overhyped because every time I ride a new Mac, and I will say Stardust Racers is great, and I prefer Stardust Racers over Hyperia, which actually brings us to another funny story.
We had multiple people at Thorpe Park, so we were wearing our little Epic Universe fleece that you've seen us wear on like our Epic Universe podcast episode. Yeah. Multiple people, staff and guests, specifically asked us. They took one look at the sweater and they looked at us and they said, "Is it better than Stardust Racers?" And they didn't even have to say what they were talking about. By it, we knew that they meant Hyperia.
Yeah.
And we had to tell them yes. Because we think it is. It is. I don't think there's any...
Stardust is better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even...
The maintenance guy was not happy to hear that.
He was... Yeah. The guy that
was like, are you kidding me?
He was like, really? I mean, you could tell everyone believed us, but you could also tell they were like, oh, like disappointed.
I mean, there are kind of different rides, but the racing element
very different.
Of course, Stardust Races is not too short.
Yeah,
I feel like
Stardust Races is longer. I think it's more fun, whereas Hyperia is terrifying and stressful.
What Hyperia does is unique. But anyway, so back to the point is that Mac rides, I think, are a little bit overhyped because I feel like everyone just loves Mac to death.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I ride a Mac, I'm like a little bit disappointed. It rattles a little bit too much. Yeah. I think it doesn't track too well. I think there's elements that are kind of a waste. I like my Mac rides, but I'm not gonna pretend like I think they're the best. I still think Intim is better. I still think Vekoma is better. I still like B&M better.
It's not even my favorite Mac hypercoaster. My favorite Mac hypercoaster
I don't agree
is Flash.
Yeah, I know that, but I don't agree
at Lewa Adventure. But they don't know that. Now they do, because I just told them.
No, that's fair.
And I know that it's not your favorite, but Flash runs better.
Flash does run better.
And it's longer.
Yeah,
and it's cooler. And it does so much stuff. I wouldn't say it's cooler. I think it's cooler.
Disagree.
It's massive. That vertical loop is like 170 feet tall.
They've actually been cloned. At least what Hyperia does is 100% unique.
It's in Turkey. That like doesn't even count.
That's bullshit. All the Europeans go...
It's not even open. It's at that park that's closed.
No, it's not.
It's not?
Land of Legends? Oh my God, everyone's riding that thing all the time. You're very wrong.
Oh, I'm thinking of the other. There's that other park in Turkey that has like 17 roller coasters that's closed.
First of all, I think it's like Land of Legends. But anyway, having said that, I do personally really believe that Hyperia is obviously much better because I think it's so unique and cooler and bigger.
No way.
Yeah, okay. Either way, I think Mac is overhyped a little bit.
Mac is overhyped. And
Hyperia is also slightly overhyped to me.
A lot of people...
If you love Hyperia, I love it. That's okay. That's cute.
A lot of people
Good for you.
Are starting to complain more and more and more about the way Mac Rides coasters track, the way Intamin coasters track, the vibrating fiberglass rattle,
the way B&M coasters.
Loose trains. Yeah, B&M is really... The quality drop-off of B&M post-COVID has raised a lot of questions.
Oh my God.
But then there's also a counter-argument that like, well... If it's that big of a deal to you, you're not a real enthusiast, or you just like to complain, or like roller coasters. If you can't handle a little rattle, like roller coasters aren't for you. And
trust me, I can handle it. I love these coasters, but I can still point it out.
What's going to happen is when the next generation Vekomas start becoming more prevalent in the West. We've got one already. We have Flash. But when Siren's Curse and Circuit Breaker open, people are going to start to realize that you can build a coaster in 2025 that doesn't run like ass. You can build a roller coaster still that runs smooth, it doesn't run loose. You can ride a coaster from Vekoma there isn't good trains and bad trains. Or in the case of, Phoenix Rising, there's one train and it's a bad train. People have gotten used to coasters just kind of having a rattle, having a vibrating fiberglass rattle BS. Intamin's not as bad, but then like after a couple years, Velocicoaster has started to rattle. Even Gotham City Escape, it takes like 2 or 3 years for those Intamins. They start to rumble a little bit off on year 3, year 4. And then you have Vekoma, which like everything Vekoma has done in the last 10 years is perfection. And it seems to just defy everything that people are so used to and either complaining about because they are not used to it or condoning it because they are used to it. But like people are going to ride Siren's Curse at Cedar Point later this month, in a couple weeks, 2 weeks.
Yeah, and they're going to realize.
They're going to realize what a good coaster feels like. They're going to realize what a well-operating coaster, a ride that is running at the top of its condition, at the top of its potential, hitting the marks, an operationally flawless ride. They're going to realize what that feels like. And it's not just something that you find on a B&M coaster built between 1994 and 2004. It's something that is still being done by at least one company.
Also, we have to do a little correction. Nemesis Inferno actually opened in 03.
That's what I said.
You said 04.
I think I said that once.
You said it was the same year as Silver Bullet.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I did say that. Yeah, that's right. You're right. But then later I said that it opened the year after Colossus.
Yeah. Anyway, you just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, you're right. That one I always kind of forget. Because in my mind, I think of it as having opened 10 years after Nemesis, but that's not true. 9 years. Anyway, all this to say, Hyperia is a great ride. It's a solid 9. But for us, for the kinds of coaster fans that we are, as big fans of B&M wing coasters and big fans of B&M inverts, a park that has this ride that also has an outstanding wing coaster, an outstanding B&M invert, it does not feel like it's competing for number 1. It feels like it's competing for top 3.
Yeah, like I understand why people love the ride so much, but for me, it doesn't do what maybe the other loopers in the park do. I will say I'm more predisposition to pick loopers over airtime focus coasters. Don't hate me for that. I just like my loopers a lot. But yeah, I think it's like number 3 in the park for me.
Yeah.
So before we go and rank the coasters in the park, I want to do a quick little general thought recap of the park. So first of all, I want to say the park was much nicer than I expected, because everyone always says like, oh, it's the Six Flags of the UK, operations aren't great, this, that, and whatever. I thought the park looked fine. I thought operations were awesome for what I was expecting, and overall we had a really fun, pleasant experience. Like we had a fun day at Thorpe Park.
We did.
We had a good time. Like one of our best days of the trip.
It feels easy when you compare it to Alton Towers, which like navigating that park and planning your day feels like a huge pain in the ass because everything is so spread out.
And then talking about spread out, not spread out, the park's layout is mad weird.
It's a weird layout.
Super weird layout, but everything's
Everything's
close.
fairly close.
Like you want to go between the furthest 2 rides, which are Hyperia and Swarm, it takes you like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty great.
Yeah.
Again, entering
really
through,
nice.
Yeah, stuff was very nice. Like I mentioned earlier, entering through the dome and then past all the water park stuff feels weird, but you get used to it quick because the whole park kind of feels disjointed. Operations were really good. Like I said, everything was decently well maintained. I didn't feel like the park felt like a Six Flags at all in that regard. Everything felt pretty nice. Everything felt nice.
Even at its worst, I feel like this park is still a better product than your average Six Flags park.
And while the park isn't very pretty, being located on the water, having all the water around, having some hills in the background, I thought overall it was
planes overhead.
It was quite nice.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't terrible. Like inside the park, of course, there's a couple of rough spots when it comes to like thematic dressing up of the park. But other than that, I thought it was fine. Way better than I expected. And the food, we have to talk about. There's a lot of third-party operators at this park. And so the food quality is actually quite good, much better than Alton Towers. And we actually went to a vegetarian Indian food truck, which was very good. It was good food. It was good food. Was it Indian? I think it was Indian.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was Mediterranean. It was Mediterranean.
Yeah.
It was Indian. There was an Indian place there next to it, I think.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was good. And then let's go ahead and talk about the rides one more time. Let's talk about the coasters, and let's give them an out of a 10 rating.
All right. So Swarm.
For me, is it... Well,
You get a 9.5.
Objective. Yeah.
I would give both of the
I would
B&Fs
probably
at
give
the
them a
park
9.
a 9.5.
I would give them a 9 because for a 10 out of 10, we need to be really freaking cool and spectacular. And it could have been a little bit different. Like, the Swarm wasn't super long.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll give that a 10. I'm sorry, I'll give that a 9, and I'll give
Okay.
Inferno a 9 too.
All right, yeah. So basically, you have those coasters and Hyperia.
I'll give all 3 a 9.
Well, they're all a solid 9.
So they're all top 3 material.
Yeah.
I just prefer Swarm,
Yeah.
Inferno,
Yeah.
Hyper. I think
For us, for the kind of people we are, we like those rides.
And then a Flying Fish Family Coaster,
It's fine.
7.
7.
Walking Dead, 7.
7. Should we give it a more than Flying Fish, though? Maybe a 7.5.
An 8 then. No, not an 8.
8 is
No,
fine.
7. Let's make Flying Fish 6.
6.
Let's talk about that. 6.
I was going to say 7's pretty generous. But it was fun. It was fun riding it.
I haven't
The
done
vibe was
stealth,
strong.
But you can say that.
I get stealth like an 8.
Oh, okay.
8.5. I mean, what would you give Accelerator? A 9? 9.5?
I'll give it an Accelerator like an 8.5.
Really? Yeah, whatever you would give Accelerator,
Minus 0.5.
take half a point
Yeah,
off.
okay, so saw the ride, 6.5.
Like a 3. I hate that ride. It's so
you really hate it.
so bad. No, it reaches a point where like some coasters are good, some are great,
Bobby
some are
Harmish.
bad, and then there's coasters that I just wouldn't ride because it is physically unpleasant. Like
Yeah.
there's bad coasters that I will still sit through every visit. Just because, like, there's a difference between like 13 bad, which is just kind of a goofy, lame ride, and then Saw, which is like
It runs like shit.
terrible,
Yeah.
like bodily harm.
But how about Colossus then?
I give Colossus like a 7.5.
Oh, I'll give it like 8.5.
8.
I
Okay.
was really impressed with
Okay,
Colossus.
8. Easily
And then
an 8.
Hyperia was at 9. So now let's do it like
I would
the
give
ranking.
I would put Stealth and Colossus kind of in the same bracket.
So what are we going to say? Are we going to say Swarm 1, Nemesis Inferno number 2, Hyperia number 3, 4.
4 I would probably be Stealth.
Okay.
Colossus is
Colossus.
5. And
Guess it
then
doesn't matter. The drop
and then-
off pretty quick. Then.
yeah, then it drops off really quick. There's an
Okay, the rest
obvious
doesn't matter.
there's an
Top
obvious
5,
there's an
nothing.
obvious top 3 and an obvious
It's top 5, and that's it.
and then an obvious top 7, which includes Flying Fish and Walking Dead. And then at the very bottom, all the way at the bottom, below everything else in the park, below Depth Charge and the teacups and everything, is Saw.
So then the question that you asked me earlier on the couch while we were having
While we're having coffee.
you asked me, do you like Alton Towers better or Thorpe Park?
I have to be like, I meant the ride lineup, like the coaster collection.
I understand that. And I've been thinking about that. And I've been thinking about it very much and long. And I don't know if my answer is final. But in this moment, at 7:09 p.m. on Thursday, June 19th, the time of recording,
This is stupid.
I think I prefer Alton Towers lineup because I feel like every coaster there has like a super identity and does a lot. Like there's no real pre-shows really at any, except for The Walking Dead, I guess. But that's kind of whatever. There is no overall like theme or aesthetic or like soundtrack that haunts you. Like Oblivion has an identity.
For me, Swarm is that.
Smiler has identity.
Swarm has that.
I get that. Nemesis identity.
Nemesis Inferno, I think, has a great identity.
So yeah, but I think between maybe there's like 3 rides there. I would say like these are like stellar identities. Maybe 4 at Thorpe, but at Alton Towers, I feel like even 13, for however shitty it is,
Yeah.
it has that identity.
I would say, I think Thorpe.
Alton Towers is more legendary like that.
For me, I would say that like the overall quality of the top 5 at Thorpe might be a little bit better, but Alton Towers just has more coasters. And they're a pretty decent quality. Like we said, Thorpe only has 8 coasters. One of them is Ass, and another one is a Mac Blauer Ensign. So from there, you really only have like 6 decent true coasters. And then for Alton Towers, you have 3 good B&Ms, ranging from like spectacular to decent. You have Smiler, which is a knockout. You have Wicker Man. That's a good top 5.
Yeah,
That's a really good top 5.
I just think overall, also the rides not being on top of each other at Thorpe Park. I'm sorry, at Alton Towers.
yeah.
At Thorpe Park, everything's on top of each other,
Yeah.
and it feels kind of like a mix smash. I really do think overall I still prefer the coast lineup at Alton Towers.
I guess my point, it was more like rhetorical because I think Alton Towers is the obvious answer. But
if you asked me which park and which lineup surprised me more, it was Thorpe Park. I wasn't expecting as much from Thorpe Park. And Alton Towers is like in such a legend and it's much more classic. Like the park's been around longer and in that sense that like it was hard to live up to the hype, and it absolutely did not. But Thorpe Park exceeded my expectations all the way around.
I will say that if I'd asked you that question 3 years ago, it wouldn't have even made sense to ask you that question because Alton Towers obviously would have been the winner. But now that Thorpe finally got another coaster and like a pretty solid one with Hyperia, now it's actually a conversation.
Yeah.
It's never really been a conversation before. And to Thorpe Park and to Hyperia's credit, now, even if you still prefer Alton Towers' coaster lineup, Thorpe actually can compete. They actually participate in that conversation instead of being a park with like 4 good coasters.
Right. So yeah, Thorpe surprised us in a good way. Had a good time. Alex went a couple months before, but he went during like really busy, shitty weather.
So busy.
We had like such a good time.
I waited 3.5 hours to ride Hyperia. We had a great time.
Like we almost thought of going back the next day, but then the weather was actually shit, so it kind of worked out.
Yeah.
Because we had such a good time. We had a ball. We had a great time.
Yeah.
And that ends this episode. So wherever you're listening, I would really prefer you to leave us a review.
5 stars. Like 13.
13-star review.
We said 13, not the 13 star.
13-star review. My birthday was on the 13th, so last week. I actually went to Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. We never talked about that, but I had a great time.
Love
so do that. Follow us on all the social media. If you want to see some photos of Thorpe Park, or if you've never seen the place before, or you want to see our photos, go to thecoastkings.com. At the time of this publishing, it will be on there. And we will catch you on our social media channels and on next week's episode. Be there or be square. Be square wheel like Hyperia. And that's it. Bye.
We kept it under an hour and 20. I love that for us. Bye.